Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans, litigation fans of all ages. This is Tim May along with
Bill Rabinowitz.
Rob Oller.
We just sat through the first time we got to talk to Ryan Day, the acting head coach of Ohio State. He was named August 1st to step in for Urban Meyer, who was suspended and will remain suspended from all activities in regards to the Ohio State football team until September the 3rd, and will miss the next two games after that. Obviously, we'll miss a season opener Saturday against Oregon State and miss the next two games against Rutgers, the Big Ten opener, and the game at TCU. But, start with you, Rob, first, since you're sort of our new guest here. What was your biggest takeaway from the conversations with Ryan Day today?
This is going to be a group effort in coaching. He made it very clear that he's not calling the shots, that Greg Schiano and Wilson are both kind of the triumvirate, I guess, of decision making. At least that's the way he put it. That he's just a placeholder. But I was pretty impressed by him. I mean, I think he has his act together.
Yeah. How about you, Bill?
Yeah, I was struck by the fact he was he'd never been a head coach, but very composed up there. Obviously knew what he was talking about. Made it very clear that he wasn't going to talk about the investigation. He has not been, was not interviewed for it, was not involved with it. He said the team was able to basically keep its focus, had a very good training camp. I think he said something like, adversity reveals character, and that's kind of what Ohio State, the attitude Ohio State took during what was obviously a very difficult preseason training camp. Yeah,
an interesting thing was when I was asking Greg Schiano a couple of questions about him. He, in essence, says that Ryan Day has that it factor of being a head coach. He's noticed that over the last 25 days, just the way he's dealt with things, the way he's leaned on Kevin Wilson and Greg Schiano, two fellas who have been head coaches. We'll see how this all plays out starting Saturday against Oregon State. As I pointed out in that press conference with the head coach, there are a lot of snap decisions you have to make in the course of a game, et cetera, which no matter what you've done for like 300 days leading up to it, pretty much decide how people think you really are as a head coach, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, that's where you get judged, right? Yeah. I mean, you can be the greatest motivator, blah, 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 but if you 4th and 2 and you only get 1 yard, you're suddenly a dope.
What a bad call, right?
What a bad call. Yeah, run him out.
Yeah. And, Bill, how do you think he will handle that, Ryan Day will handle that aspect of it?
Well, I think he's going to rely on Kevin Wilson. He's going to rely on Greg Schiano. And he's lucky in that the first two games, I think the three of us could probably coach this team during those two games. Oregon State is one of the worst teams in college football last year.
Was last year.
Well, it was last year. Rutgers is obviously, they're building. They're better than they were, but they're going to be starting a true freshman quarterback. These are two games kind of ease the transition. Obviously, TCU is a different animal. I mean, TCU is a very good team, but by then you figure they've worked out the kinks and they'll be okay.
Yeah. Real quick before we break for our first commercial break here, what was the biggest development in your minds in preseason camp that we heard today? Mine was finally the affirmation, the confirmation that Michael Jordan is the starting center. I've written about that a couple of times as camp has gone along, even though we haven't been able to watch. But just that interesting offensive line now with Malcolm Pridgeon really coming on, the junior college transfer from a couple of years ago. He's going to start at left guard. Demetrius Knox will return as the right guard starter. Isaiah Prince, the experiment with him during the spring at left tackle didn't work. He's going to be the starting right tackle. And then either Thayer Munford or Josh Allaby, because Thayer Munford's been kind of banged up through the preseason camp. But Josh Allaby, a guy who was a defensive tackle a couple of years ago, could be the starting left tackle against Oregon State in the opener. So that, to me, was a major development. What was your take?
I thought the linebackers, Pete Werner is going to play alongside Baron Browning and Malik Harrison. I don't think Harrison's a surprise. I don't think Baron Browning's a surprise, especially with Tuff Borland being out. Werner is a bit of a surprise. We knew he was in the mix, but he's a guy that was a little bit of an under-the-radar prospect, not low level, but not maybe a guy that you thought would start this early, and that's an impressive thing for Pete Werner.
Yeah, I kind of wrote about that as the preseason camp went along, because obviously we got no access to the camp except for a couple of days, 30 minutes each, and but the word filtering out was that Pete Werner was making a heck of a move. Keandre Jones is still in that mix, but for you, Rob Oller, what stood out?
Well, confirmation that Tate Martell is going to play in the game as a backup quarterback. The other thing that I thought was interesting is, they got asked about the starting quarterback, who is
Dwayne Haskins Jr.
Yes, make sure you get the junior on there.
Correct. Well, that's what he goes.
Haskins Jr.
That's what he goes by.
Say JT Barrett. Here's the deal.
The fourth.
He has got rid of body fat, right? He is stronger, more athletic. But he didn't answer the question. They didn't answer the question about leadership. I thought that was interesting. That may be still a work in progress with him really being a strong leader. He talked about the physical, not the mental, and that Martell is going to be playing, which we all thought that, but it's official.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, let's face it, they've only got two quarterbacks they really trust right now, and neither one of them has been a starter at Ohio State. Martell obviously has never played in a real game. The interesting thing that a lot of people thought was that they might bring Martell along and maybe keep him in bubble wrap on the sideline, because if something happens to Dwayne Haskins Jr., Martell would be the guy that has to go in, but he's never played, so you've got to get him some experience, et cetera. That's really no surprise. The big question is who would be the next guy to go in? God forbid if something happens to those two guys. And, I don't think that's as clear. It could be Corey Curtis, the walk-on who lost his black stripe finally. He's the guy that probably knows the system better than anybody else, because Matthew Baldwin, the freshman from Lake Travis High School in Texas, is still recovering or coming back. He's not totally back from his knee injury, but they expect him back. But that would be the really curious things, what happened there. Bottom line is, let's jump to the defense real quick. The biggest development defensively, as you talked about a while ago, past the Pete Werner thing, but what's your take on how this defense will be different this year?
Well, I'm amused. I think it's interesting that they still have not settled on the safety opposite Jordan Fuller. We kind of thought in the spring Isaiah Pryor would take that job. He didn't. Here we are 5 days before. It's between Pryor and Jocelyn Wint. They'll probably rotate kind of like what they did last year with Fuller and Eric Smith. And Fuller sees that job pretty early on. Yeah. So that's one thing. I think they're going to give Joey, we do it all the time, don't we? Nick Bosa.
You do, I don't.
Yeah. Nick Bosa, there's going to be a rotation, but some are more equal than others. Nick Bosa will be more equal. He will get more snaps than anyone else on the defensive line, probably.
You got to figure John Bosa and Cheryl Bosa make that same mistake. I mean, I make that mistake when I call my daughter Corey and call my son Caroline. He gets really upset. But how about you, Robo? What did you hear about the defense that kind of piques your interest?
Well, I don't mix up the genders like that. I do call my daughters by it, but I don't switch over gender. I don't call my son. Just so for the record.
I'm sure you have, but that's okay. Go ahead.
With my old brand. Bosa. I'm looking forward to see Bosa. I mean, it's, what do you call him, a specimen? Yeah. Do you think Nick could be as good as Joey?
No, I think Nick is a little bit different ball player, but I think Nick is as effective, if not more so, than Joey. I mean, I'm really interested to see how they use him this year. A classic defensive end, because he is at his best when they get him inside and go one-on-one with the guard sometimes, which is modern college football, man. They don't line up like the old days where you got a 4-3 and this guy plays here all the time and that guy plays outside linebacker all the time. I mean, what you like about the way Larry Johnson does things is, and a lot of coaches around the country, they're looking for matchups, and they're looking at, if you can make the tackle, worry about this guy on the edge, and you put Nick Bosa one-on-one with a guard in like the B gap area, you might have exactly what you want, instant pressure on the quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see how they play games with that.
Who replaces Nick Bosa once he leaves after this season?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they've got guys coming along. Obviously, Chase Young is on one as far as being ballyhooed. Jonathan Cooper, they really like him a lot. Tyreek Smith made huge strides, understood, in preseason camp, the freshman from Cleveland. They've got Ja'Shawn Cornell is back out there at defensive end. We'll see how much he plays at that spot. Tyler Friday, you got to keep your eye on him. So, there are guys coming along, and they've got to, they'll have a couple of guys in this recruiting class I'm sure they'll lean on. Here's Ohio State going into a season opener with a brand new head coach, or acting head coach, in Ryan Day. Ironically, he's going to be going against Oregon State, or the Buckeyes will be, with a brand new head coach, Jonathan Smith. They're both 39 years old. Jonathan Smith most recently was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Washington. If you know anything about Washington's program offensively, they basically, under Coach Peterson, as they say, they have plays. They don't have scheme, and they just line up from one play to the next and are looking for some kind of mismatch, either overpower one side or the other, or catch somebody on the flip-flop. And I expect that to be much the case on Saturday with Oregon State. My point being, Ohio State, here's a team being led by a first-time head coach and some pretty key new people in certain positions, and I'm sure they're not really sure what to expect on Saturday.
What's the quarterback situation at Oregon State?
Well, Luton, he was going to be named on Monday, but there was basically the speculation was Jake Luton, the guy who started last year before he got hurt, was going to be the starter again.
And he's a
6'7", 235, 240-pound guy who is pretty much a pocket guy, but no that's like with Washington with Browning, the quarterback. That obviously they went places with that guy, and he wasn't a statue, but he was closer to it than maybe some of these modern day quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think Ohio State, the last few years, just my recollection is that if they've struggled, they've struggled against these dual threat guys,
like everybody else does.
Well, exactly. But the pocket guy just plays into their hands. I don't see a pocket passer 6'7". I don't care if he's 7'3". Right? I mean, they'll tee off, and doesn't really matter what happens at quarterback in a sense. They are overmatched.
But how do you really feel, Robo? No, go ahead, Bill.
You wouldn't care if he was 7'3"?
I would, because I would pay money to watch that.
Right. A couple guys that were not mentioned in the press conference in probably in the hour almost that we talked. Draymond Jones, who's going to be an absolute stud at defensive tackle. And the running backs, J.K. Dobbins and Mike.
I thought you were going to say B.B. Landers. I mean, as far as getting after the quarterback, pressuring the A-gap.
Talk about, getting mismatches. He's the ideal guy for that because he's a smaller guy in terms of height. And he just kind of gets under the leverage. He just kind of gets in there.
Like a BB.
Like a BB. And a delightful guy, as we all know.
Absolutely.
But
I call him Notre Dame. You know that.
Why is that?
Because he dyed the top of his hair golden, and I'm saying he's under the Golden Dome.
Okay. But Dobbins, we know.
That's a good one.
Where am I supposed to go with this? Dobbins was not mentioned. Obviously, we know he's a stud. Mike Weber, same thing.
It's kind of like saying the sun came up. Who are your top two running backs?
Any other team? Well, what are the odds of last year Penn State's opening press conference they didn't talk about Saquon Barkley? Yeah. Ohio State has a loaded roster. The thing that people should not forget is that even without Urban Meyer on the sidelines, this is Urban Meyer's recruited team. I mean, this team is loaded from top to bottom. Are there a lot of questions to ask and answer? Yes, there are. But it's not a question of talent.
And Tough Borland, there's news, right? Tough Borland may play this week, coming back off what we think is an Achilles injury.
Basically a ruptured Achilles tendon, which in essence they corrected with surgery. And but he is, that's one of those pardon the puns, tough situations to deal with. I'm sure they have been very impressed with the way he's come back. He's been running around out on the practice fields. I don't think they've really turned him loose yet, the way I understand it. But they've been impressed just to his progress and stuff. But like Greg Schiano kind of indicated this without saying it. If they say he can come back this week, maybe wait till next week might be the prudent thing to do.
They were going to protect him. Schiano definitely said, it's our call, and I think Borland wants to come back. That's the type of guy he is. But
he was named captain. He was elected captain. Right. That just shows you what kind. Think about this, guys. 4 of their captains. They've got 7. 4 of them. 3 of them are wide receivers, which I never thought I'd see that ever in my life. That's why I asked Greg Schiano about that. How just wow, because like I said, those guys are out on the edge in all kinds of ways. Not
out there.
Exactly. But these are 3 guys: Johnny Dixon, Terry McLaurin, and Paris Campbell, who have asserted themselves. Obviously, with the team, Paris Campbell and McLaurin are repeat captains. That's a big honor too, just to think about it. And then you add the other ones, like Nick Bosa as a captain. I mean, that just shows you maybe sort of the leadership that he has asserted, as this season goes along. And Isaiah Prince. Would you have thought Isaiah Prince 3 years ago would be a captain of this football team?
Of all the guys on this team, I think Isaiah Prince has traveled the farthest.
The path, the longest path.
From 2016, when in the biggest games he struggled so badly, you could just tell he had no confidence at all. And now he's a captain, and we saw him in Chicago. I mean, he has such a presence about him now, such a maturity about him now, so different than 2 years ago. And that's a testament to him. It's also a testament to the program that they would take a guy who could have lost him. That's the kind of guy you lose sometimes, and obviously he responded the right way.
That's kind of the way college works, though. Sometimes we were all there. There's some real knuckleheads that freshman year, and by the time they get out, it's like, wow, this guy made a transformation. That could be what's going on there, and good for the kid.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all know that almost anyone who goes to college would be better served by spending a year doing something else other than going to college that first year to get their feet under them, et cetera. Well, you know what? There's all kinds of things to talk about, obviously, and we'll be back next week to talk about even more things, because obviously Ohio State's a 38-point favorite as I sit here and speak today over Oregon State, which was 1-11 last year. Its only win was over Portland State, an FCS school, and I made fun of Alabama playing Mercer, but Mercer was probably better than Oregon State last year. So we'll see how much progress they made. But, yeah, this is going to be an interesting time. For the first time in 7 years, there will be a new head coach on the sidelines, Ryan Day, leading Ohio State. He will lead Ohio State for the first 3 games until Urban Meyer's allowed to come back and actually coach the team on the sidelines during a game. So, guys, we'll have plenty to talk about this time next week. But until then, this is Tim May along with
Bill Rabinowitz
and Rob Oller.
Thanks for joining us.